Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Hope you had a good tea break. Those of you were at the other breakout rooms as well. Hope you enjoyed those sessions. Back to the main plenary. Now, the topic of this is the evolving scams landscape, threats and trends. Now, so in this session, our Meta leaders will share how platforms, policy, and technology must come together to counter abuse and keep pace with the fast-changing scam networks. So our speakers are Maxim Prades, Director of Product Management at Meta, and Nathaniel Glacier, Director and Global Head Security Policy and Counter Fraud at Meta, and they will take us through the evolving scams landscape. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome them on stage, please.
Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you for sticking through to the end of the day with us. I really appreciate it. I'm very sensitive that we are the last thing standing between you and getting out for a good drink, so we'll do our best to make it worth it. You all have seen me before. We have been here for a little while at GASS talking about the work we're doing to tackle scams and what we're seeing from scammers. I'm really excited today that I'm joined by Maxime, who's my counterpart on the product side. His team leads the product and engineering work we do to tackle scams. The truth is, back at Meta, I think the running joke is we basically interact like a married couple at this point. So we're going to try not to bicker too much on stage, but I can't promise anything. I do think, though, having the lead who's thinking about the product implications and the things we're building is going to help in this conversation.
Thank you, Honey. Nathaniel. Nathaniel's our global head of counter fraud and a subject matter expert in the space of frauds and scam. I'm really excited to be here, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about our efforts to counter global scams.
So what we want to do today is talk to you about three things. We want to talk about what we're seeing from the criminals that are driving scams. We want to talk about the tools we're building to counter scams and some of the impact we're seeing. And we want to talk about the partnerships, including the folks right here in this room that we're seeing drive down scams today. But one of the threads you'll see throughout this conversation, we want to talk more and more about the measurement, the metrics, the impact we're seeing our work have, and what more needs to be done. So to start, look, we don't need to tell people in this room how serious the threat from scams is, the systemic consequences, the harms that it causes. I think it's really useful to be talking about scams here today, because as we've all heard throughout the day, not that far north and not that far east, the scam centers are driving incredible harm. They are the most malicious actors, the most adversarial actors, criminal actors driving this harm. This map is generated by our intelligence teams. We have specific teams that are focused on tracking the criminal scam syndicates in particular and disrupting their activities. And so we build consistent ongoing visualization so we can understand where they're operating from and the activities they're engaged in online. We generate this type of intelligence because over the past just 6 months, we have removed more than 12 million accounts linked to these scam centers on Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. That's just in the last 6 months. Every time we run one of these investigations and take one of these actions, we learn more about what they're doing online, about the techniques that they're using, and we're able to build this type of understanding that we keep updating. The scam centers are some of the most malicious actors, but they're only one piece of the bigger scams challenge. And I wouldn't want you to think we're just focused on that component.
So zooming out a little bit and talking about scam ads in general. Over the last year, so in 2024, we've managed to take down 157 million scam ads that were reported for violating our frauds and scam policy. The number that's really important on this slide to remember is that 90% of those scam ads were removed before anyone ever reported it to Meta. Now, I want to talk a little bit about paid scams, the scams that abuse our ads policies and our ads systems, because these are particularly malicious and very top of mind here today. Today, I want to introduce a new metric that I think we're just starting to talk about publicly, which is exciting. It's a metric called SRMV, Scams Report Per Million Views. And what that metric is the number of user reports that we get for ads as scams for violating our scams policy out of every million view. And so what we do is we look at kind of those user reports, we look at the ones that are reported for scams, and we compare them with the million views and kind of give us a metric that we track over time. Nathaniel will talk about that in a second. The reason we do this, the reason we use user reports, is that it's a metric that is resilient to adversarial behavior. As Nathaniel mentioned, scammers and criminals operating scam centers and scams in general tend to be extremely adversarial and are always constantly evading our defenses. And you'll see this in a little bit on some of our metrics and stories. But we found that leveraging user reports helps us be more resilient to these adversarial behaviors. And then lastly, I want to make sure that you understand this metric doesn't necessarily mean that every user report is a confirmed scam. It is just a proxy metric. It is not perfect, but it's a good proxy for us to be able to track progress overall.
So I'm sure you're wondering, what do we see? So this shows SRMV, the metric that Maxime just described, globally over about the last year. It runs from July of 24 up until the end of June, so just about 2 months ago. And it shows an overarching trend, which is encouraging. But I think there are 3 things that I would pull out of this graph to give context. Scale always matters and the absolute numbers matter. What we're seeing here is about a year ago, we saw around 4.4 reports of scams by users out of every million views. Just a couple of months ago, we saw about 1.8 reports of scams of users by users out of every million views. So the first thing this shows us is that we're seeing an almost 60% reduction in the reports of scams by our users in the paid space over the past year, driven by all the work that's been happening, driven by the broader things that are happening in the world. That's encouraging. The other thing that this shows us that I think is really important has to do with the volume. So right now, we're seeing around 1.8 reports per million views. If you think about what that means that ads that are reported as scams by users are a very small percentage of the ads that people are seeing, right? That is less than half of, I think it's 1/100th of 1 percentage point of the views. Now, this does not mean scams are not a serious challenge. They are. It doesn't mean the scammers behind this aren't incredibly malicious and harmful. They are. It means that this is a targeted, focused problem driven by a small community of bad actors that are having and causing incredible outsized harm because of what they're doing. That's really important to us as we're designing the tools to counter this. And you'll see this as Maxime talks more about some of them. When we're thinking about the tools, we do everything we can to target that malicious, focused, outsized harm group. The third thing that this shows is that it's not a smooth line. It goes up and it goes down and it shifts throughout the year. That's because this is an incredibly adversarial space. Scammers are always trying to evade our defenses. They're coming up with new ideas. They're responding to what we do. So you're going to see this go up and down as time passes and as defenders work to contain them and as scammers innovate.
And speaking of, there's an interesting little trend here that you see right around January of this year. I have a little fun laser.
You do. His laser works, mine doesn't, but I'm not bitter about that.
You might think that this trend is adversarial behavior. In this case, it actually isn't, but I thought it was really interesting to talk about it a little bit. What typically happens is advertisers will spend most, if not all, of their budget towards the end of the year, towards the holidays. And then what happens in January is because volume goes down, volume of relative ads goes down, you'll see an uptick in scam reports. Again, so remember, this is SRMV, so it's the user reports of ads validating our scam policies, right? And so what you see is an uptick, and then right after that, our systems kind of catch this uptick and immediately kind of start driving it down through adaptation and kind of defense mechanisms. So thought it was an interesting one to highlight.
We've been talking here about global numbers, but I do want to be clear that the numbers we see in APAC and in countries across the region are similar to this. And so I wanted to zoom in on one particular type of scam, celeb bait ads, here in Asia, which I know are a major focus. For this type of scam, we're seeing a similar pattern. We're seeing a reduction of about 20% over the course of the last year. And we're seeing fairly consistent data to scams overall. The volume is, of course, much lower, right? It's only 0.28 or less than a quarter of reports per million views because it's one type of scam. And it's worth noting, Maxime is going to talk in a minute about some of the tools we've released around facial recognition that actually we announced here at GASS that we were testing a year ago. All of this is largely before those tools have come online and have had major impact. So when he starts talking about those numbers, all of that should be on top of this and should help reduce it further.
So let's talk a little bit about the platform defenses and the things we're doing to improve this situation. The first one that we're excited to talk about is stopping scams with facial recognition. We started this in October last year, and for eligible public figures, what we've done is we've used facial recognition technology. We've created facial embeddings of their face using Facebook profile and Instagram profile, and we automatically detect and block the ads that leverage those faces. Through this technology, what we've done today is we cover about 500,000 public figures, eligible public figures. We protect them through this system. Now, you might be wondering, okay, but what impact does this have? So we said this, we started in October last year, and we ran a test recently in June 2025, so just a couple months ago. And we found that we automatically block 100% more of these scam celeb bait ads than we did before through this facial embedding, facial recognition technology. Right now what we're doing is we're taking this technology and experimenting and rolling it out to more impersonation harms on Instagram and on Facebook. But what I really want to kind of impress on is this is almost doubling our impact through one of many defenses towards celeb bait scam ads.
So celeb bait ads are one type of harm. The other thing we see consistently, this will surprise no one in this room, is that it turns out that if you're going to run a scam, you probably don't use your real name or your real account. About 20% of scams are driven from compromised accounts. A criminal hacks into someone's account and uses that to run a scam. So we've had a particular focus over the past year on driving down account compromise across our platform. First of all, it gets people back access to their real accounts, but on top of that, it denies scammers a tool, a resource we know they need. The good news is we've seen some really positive impact. Last quarter, we observed almost a 50% reduction in detected compromise on Facebook, and more than 40% reduction on compromise on Instagram. We did that by improving our machine learning models to do better automated detection, by implementing CAPTCHAs that block large-scale scripting attacks, by rolling out passkeys, by expanding two-factor authentication. All of these things together drive down account compromise. One of the other things we relied on, though, is partnerships. And the reason for that is it turns out that many compromise attempts targeting Meta accounts start off-platform. So if you want to hack into Maxime's Meta account, the first thing you might do is target his personal email. And then once you've owned that, you'd move to his Meta account. That's really challenging for us, because while we protect Maxime's Meta account, we don't protect his personal email. And so this is where partnerships come in and why it's so important. So something that I'm really excited to talk about is that we're now running two separate pilots, one with Google, one with Microsoft, who have been incredible partners, to work together to detect and block this type of cross-platform compromise. So if one of those companies sees a compromised email, they can warn us about it, and if we see it, we can take action. And in the reverse, if we see a compromised account, chances are that might be linked back to a risk on their platforms. So we're both getting faster at detecting and blocking this type of account compromise. And I should note that that Microsoft program is running across the Global Signal Exchange, which is a really exciting program you've already heard about here today that we joined and Microsoft joined recently. Google has been a member, others in the room are members. And this idea of rapid, accelerated intelligence sharing, and not just sharing intelligence, but acting on that intelligence, is really powerful.
I want to talk a little bit about verification. I know it's top of mind for a lot of you in this room. Whether it's through identity verification or business verification, we are continuing our efforts. We believe verification is a very important tool. I want to be clear that we don't think it's a silver bullet, but it is a very important tool that we're going to continue expanding in the region and globally. We'll be doing this through risky signals. We'll be doing this through the type of ads that an account runs, through the many different signals that we leverage to kind of ensure that we ask the right accounts to verify, all in order to kind of drive down the scam prevalence. One of the things we'll also be doing is increasing the incentives for voluntary verification to make sure that advertisers who want to verify have all the incentives to do so. I want to touch a little bit on this. Nathaniel spoke earlier about scam centers, the most malicious actors out there. To be honest, quite frankly, criminals that leverage what I believe the UN has called modern slavery. Their use of illegal means and the use of labor exploitation practices is quite frankly really difficult, and we've been partnering with NGOs such as, I believe they're about to do a keynote in a couple minutes, the International Justice Mission. And what we've done is we've rolled out a couple months ago this search interstitial that you see on the screen. To be clear, we are already blocking obvious scam job ads, right? This is just for things that are potentially targeted at triggering and targeting victims and tricking them into thinking that something is a legitimate job. So we've rolled out that search interstitial in the spirit of trying to create friction and warn people that might get tricked by those ads. Sorry. On WhatsApp, a lot of you here use WhatsApp, and I know WhatsApp is top of mind when we talk about scams. One thing we rolled out a couple weeks ago on WhatsApp is the ability to provide more context when you get added to a group. Whether it's a group that you get added to from another different website, different platform, or whether it's a group you get added to by someone not in your contacts. The idea behind this is to provide you more context cards, information about the group you're about to join, information about the conversations in the group. The ability also for you to leave the group without ever seeing anything or without notifying anyone that you're about to do so. The goal is providing you more context and more control over where you're added, by whom, and how.
So that was some products we're rolling out and have rolled out, and some of the impact we've seen in our goal of making our platforms as resilient to scams as possible. But the truth is that partnerships are every bit as essential in tackling this, and I'll give you a simple illustration of why. Almost every scam that we see on our platform quickly leaves our platform and leads their targets to websites on the open internet. And that website is where the scam itself is often perpetrated. When we identify these abusive websites, we block them. And we maintain a dynamic block list to make sure that scammers can't keep using the same website to scam people. But the problem is that when we block them, those websites stay up on the open internet. They often stay up for 3 years. So they're blocked from meta platforms. But 3 years is a long time and a lot of potential for people to get harmed in other parts of the internet. So one of the things that we're doing is we're now sharing our block list across the global signal exchange so that other companies can consume it, learn from what we've seen, and take action to block these websites as well. And other GSE members are doing the same thing. And that type of exchange is absolutely critical because it takes a long time to remove abusive websites from the internet. But if we are seeing a confirmed scam, and our partners at another platform are seeing a confirmed scam, if we can both block at the same time together and learn from each other, we can contain scammers more quickly, and we can make those websites that they right now use as beachheads to keep running scams for years a lot less valuable and a lot less effective. We're also driving user education because people get targeted across the broader internet, and we want to keep people safe on our platforms. But the truth is, on other platforms, if they get exposed, we want to help them, and they're probably going to come to our platforms as well. And so we've worked with dozens of partners to run these education plans and programs to help people understand how do you spot scams, how do you keep yourself safe when you see them, what steps should you take.
I want to talk about FIRE. FIRE is the Fraud Intelligence Reciprocal Exchange Program. It's our signature marquee signal sharing program with the bank and the financial sector industry. I'll give you an example of some of the impact that FIRE is having. We partnered with the Australian Financial Crime Exchange, the AFCX. And what they did is they sent us about 6 seeds, so 6 groups, Facebook groups that were exchanging bank account information. Through this program and this software program partnership that we set up, and this is one example out of many. There's many, many like this. Decided to pick this one today to talk a little bit about it. This led us to find 3,000 different assets on our platforms, whether that's groups, pages, profiles, etc. We took those down. That's about 600 different criminal assets for scams removed from the platform for every seed that was provided to us through this program. So the impact here, the multiplication factor is really massive. What's exciting to announce today is that through our FS-ISAC partnership, FIRE is now available to financial institutions and banks in the region, in APAC, but also right here in Singapore.
So we've talked about partnerships with the tech sector. Maxime just talked about partnerships with the financial sector. The other community that's essential in tackling scams is government. Government partners who are also working to keep people safe. And so I'm really excited here to be able to highlight a partnership and a pilot we have with GovTech Singapore and the Singapore Police Force, where they have been testing since late last year the ability to share with us via the Global Signal Exchange signals of phishing or scam URLs on our platforms. Based on that pilot, we've been able to investigate and take action on more than 17,000 assets on our platforms. And we're now working with them to expand this program through GSE, to use AI to scale what we're doing, to improve the quality and detection and speed of what we're doing. And I want to take a minute and call out two things. The first is just to say the Singaporean government has been a real leader here in driving this. And it's been really exciting to see what's happened. I think there's a lot more to do as we partner with regulators around the world to catch and block these scams. And the second is to call out again the Global Signal Exchange, which accelerates and speeds up these sharing programs. One of the biggest challenges is that scammers can move very quickly. And as defenders, we're most effective when we're working together. But everyone here knows coordination is hard. It just takes time. It takes legal analysis and negotiation. It takes technical building. So anything we can do to move faster in partnership is going to amplify and multiply our ability to counter these scammers. So we've talked about a bunch of different things that we've done, because, I mean, honestly, it's been a really busy year. There's a lot of work to do here. But I wanted to leave you, and we wanted to leave you with just a couple of takeaways. The first is that these scammers are not going to give up. And they're not going to give up because they are criminals, and they are operating from a place where they're not facing serious consequences for their actions. They're making money, they're hurting people, and they don't mind doing that, and they're going to keep trying. And at the end of the day, essential work that I know is happening from people here and from our partners outside is how do we drive consequences to these scammers, offline consequences to these criminals.
The second point is that we won't stop either. We're going to keep taking steps to counter them. We've launched facial recognitions. We've improved classifiers. We've launched contextual cards in WhatsApp. We have expanded the Fire partnership. We're going to keep at it, and we're going to keep trying. We're going to keep being here and keep showing up and keep deterring them.
And we're doing it together with a whole bunch of people around the world, with people in APAC, and with people right here in this room. And what's really powerful to me is these partnerships we're talking about, we're not just sharing intelligence, we're taking action. Every single one of these partnerships is making life harder for scammers today. We're taking down harm today, and we're helping keep people safe. So when you put all these things together, when you put together product launches on the platform, partnerships across society, and the broader work, we're seeing impact. We're seeing reduction. None of that is to say that scams is solved or in good shape. These actors are incredibly adversarial. They are criminals, and we know they will keep trying. The good news, though, is we are seeing progress because of the work of everyone here. And so I just want to say thank you very much for taking the time to listen, but honestly also for all the work that all of you are doing. The thing that has struck me about GASS over the various conferences that I've been to is that it brings together an incredible community of defenders who understand the seriousness of the harm and are working together to tackle it. Each from different zones, right? We can build things on our platform, we can partner with other companies, law enforcement can investigate and enforce, the other people in the room, we all have our different roles to play. But it's incredibly powerful. So thank you for the work that you're doing. And if you have any questions, please feel free to come up. We'd be more than happy to answer them and talk more about this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maxim and Nathaniel. Thank you, gentlemen. Certainly great to hear the partnerships that Meta is striking to take scams seriously, either with government, with civil organizations, civil society, and even with their competitors, big tech as well, working together to tackle the global issue of scams. So thank you very much.